segment is on crowdfunding. Conversations once again are free and open to the public thanks to the support of the Holmberg Foundation. Thanks to Fuel Film for helping lead the panels. None of this would be possible without the generous support of Duncan Williams. So turn your phone on vibrate. Some panels say turn your phone off. We want you to tweet. We want you to Facebook. We've even provided links that would be applicable. We want you to tweet. We want you to tell your friends what an awesome panel this is, what great information you're getting. So please tweet using the hashtag #IndieMemphis, tweet or Facebook. Our guest speaker this morning is Emily Best. She's an LA-based filmmaker. She's also the founder and CEO of Seed&Spark, which is an organization developed for the purpose of crowdfunding and distribution, important to indie filmmaking. So if you would please, let's welcome Emily Best.
And a hot coffee.
And a coffee.
So thanks for being here on this daylight savings morning after the big party. I really appreciate it. Crowdfunding to build independence is not a 2-hour timeshare sale of Seed&Spark. I will go over with you quickly how it works, and then we will leave it at that. And we will also get into the specifics of successful crowdfunding, but as we were talking this morning, I realized that something I've never said out loud before, but that I believe pretty firmly, is that to be a filmmaker is to be a crowdfunder. Because your funding, whether it's from distribution revenue or money for production, always comes from your crowd. And so, in fact, we finally just have a word and a set of techniques to sort of understand and codify the things that we've always been needing to do. And so this class is really taking the best practices of crowdfunding and helping you understand that if you apply them consistently, it's about building independence for your career as a filmmaker. I mean, I don't know how it is in Memphis yet. This is part of what I'm here to learn. But in Hollywood and generally, even if you hit the jackpot as an indie filmmaker, and your film gets picked up by Dan Guando from Weinstein Company and gets distributed into a bunch of theaters, you must probably, I mean, literally 99.9 times out of 100, you don't see any money. The distributor makes money, and sometimes your investors make money, but the creators very, very rarely make any money. And that's silly. And there are a lot, and also that only happens for the 0.01% of filmmakers anyway. I mean, Dan can only pick up so many films a year, and his heart is absolutely in the right place, but even he is aware of the limitations of what he's able to do. So we're here to say it might be okay if we are the 99.9%, and if we are, there are certain ways that we're going to have to approach our careers that will put us in a better position to make a sustainable living for ourselves. This deck and the handbook version of this class and all the templates that I talk about tonight are available for download. So if your wrist gets tired taking notes, I just want to let you know, it's all available to you and you won't miss any of it. And also they're videotaping it. Hi, in the videotape. So yeah, there's no way you're going to miss out on a single word that was said here. So Seed&Spark is crowdfunding and integrated distribution. Our crowdfunding tool works like a wedding registry. We call it the wish list. Individual supporters can contribute. So you list the individual items you need, and then your supporters can contribute money towards those items, or if they own that item, they can loan it to you directly. So if I have the Ari Alexa or the 5D that you want for your project, and I'm broke, but I want to help you out, I can just loan you this piece of equipment. And we're seeing filmmakers do this with each other all the time. It's super cool because it's creating a really warm, gooey feeling in the independent film communities. And this is how, particularly, you can reach out to your local community as a part of your crowdfunding undertaking. We're built for staged financing, so if you do multiple crowdfunding campaigns for a single film, which we see filmmakers do all the time, they'll do development and production, or maybe they'll come back for post and festival distribution. You just open one page, and then you don't only gather supporters, you can also gather followers. It looks like a little high five. These are people who are like, not sure yet, but I like where you're going, and their email address goes into your bank, And they get your updates, and these are people who early in your campaign often become supporters later in the campaign. And also you can continue to gather those followers after your crowdfunding campaign is finished, because of course, the audience building job of a filmmaker is never done. And the platform is built to reflect that. And we are a perks-based crowdfunding site like the other ones, so you offer rewards in return for the contributions. We as a site also offer rewards points called Sparks, and those Sparks can be redeemed to watch films streaming on our platform. If you crowdfund successfully on Seed&Spark, you are guaranteed a spot in our streaming cinema. This is streaming transactional VOD, like iTunes or rental, like, right? That's sort of what it's like. And starting in 2015, Circle of Trust, you plug your ears for a second, we'll be distributing out to iTunes and Verizon Fios VOD as well. So it'll be the first time in film business history that a successful crowdfunding campaign that the crowd greenlights will be guaranteed meaningful distribution. And we plan to rack up more and more of those kinds of deals as we go along. So that part's really exciting. You can apply just to stream in our cinema and for our distribution deals, in which case we curate like any other site. We watch it, we think if it's good, we say yes, and if you need help on the sound, we will write back and be like, if you clean up your sound, then it's a yes. Come on in. How you doing?
Well,
you got these in your festival bags, I think. This is Bright Ideas Magazine. We publish this magazine twice a year. It is the official magazine of the Sundance membership. It is distributed at all the top North American film festivals and at about 30 regional festivals. And later I will talk about why regional festivals are way more important than the big guys. This thing, which weighs a pound and a half, carrying boxes of them around the country has been quite an undertaking, is meant to be sort of a medium is the message example of what we believe the actual significance of independent film is as a cultural force. The cool thing about technology now is that we no longer only have to have a national consciousness defined by movies that are shot in Los Angeles and New York. We have movies moving into the national consciousness that are shot in Memphis and in Austin and in Michigan and all these cities where the people in them are starting to understand that their stories are universal stories as well. This is a very important and exciting time that doesn't only belong to the wealthy, the white, the male. And that's okay, because the wealthy, white, and male are going to be just fine in the future of film as well. It's just like the rest of us are going to have a shot at this. So that's Bright Ideas. I have discount cards for the 2015 subscription if you want them, so you can just hit me up afterwards. We've been working with a company called Tugg. Are any of you familiar with Tugg? One person, two people. Tugg owes me so much money for this trip, it's not even funny. Tugg is a way to crowdsource your theatrical release. So you put your film on Tugg and you set a threshold. A local promoter in another city says, I want to see that film. Tugg contacts a local venue and they set a minimum, and together that might be $1,000. So you need to sell, I don't know, 100 or 120 tickets to guarantee that night. But then everybody makes money and the movie screens theatrically. And we've seen this done for one-off screenings. They also have a non-theatrical division for community and university screenings. And Tugg is an example of one of the myriad tools that are available to you right now to control your destiny as a filmmaker. So what's really important to me is that we look at the tools like social media as tools for the great, I mean, people say democratization. I think it's a great meritocratization in an interesting way. But the tools that are available to me, the authoring tools like Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest and all these things, these are the tools that the President of the United States and Beyonce are using. And I get to use the same tools that they do. And that's never been true before, right? So the best tools for building audiences are available to everyone. And that's why this entire presentation is really meant to help you understand how to use those tools to build a direct connection to your audience. Because the only proven path to independence that we have seen so far has been artists who have maintained a direct connection to their audience. Otherwise, you're just waiting around for the big guy on the hill to pick you or to give you money. And again, since that's usually only the 0.01%, You can wait a frustratingly long time, also sometimes forever, for that selection process to happen. And what I would like everyone to get in control of is letting the audiences be the one to select, because ultimately theirs is the only opinion that matters. And if Hollywood is demonstrating anything right now, is that they don't give a shit what the audience is actually selecting. I don't understand how you can have 51% female ticket buyers and 11% female protagonists. That doesn't make any sense. And 2% women behind the camera. Like, sorry friends, you're ignoring some pretty staggering demographic facts. So if you want to bypass all these depressing demographics, you build a direct connection to your audience. And in the next 10 years, we can expect to see 10 times, I actually can't do the math, Moore's laws, double the processing capacity every 18 months. So like a lot of times, 20, 30 times, the amount of change in the next 10 years than we've seen in the last 10. And in any scenario you can think of, including the one where they implant a chip in your head and you just think of the movie that you want to see and Apple Pay processes it out your ear, even in that scenario, the direct connection to your audience is going to be hugely important. We are becoming more and more fragmented, down to when the end user is the only curator there is, in which case you better be building this connection along so they know to think of you when it comes time to watch a movie. So if you are thinking about crowdfunding, you can't be focused just on the funding. This is a longer game here. I'm pretty sure the goal of making movies is not to get them made, but to get them seen, which is why we are at a festival in the first place. So you've got to think about how you're going to deliver your film. What's your strategy for that? What happens if you get picked up by a distributor? Do you know what it costs to deliver a Netflix original if you get picked up out of a festival for all territories, all rights by Netflix? $100,000, and they don't pay for that. And what happens if you don't? What happens if it's your responsibility to deliver the film that you have made to audiences and get it to reach the widest possible audiences? That takes human and monetary resources. Think about where you want to screen theatrically and how you're going to build the audiences there. And then, of course, all of this has, again, human and monetary costs. So it starts really simply, you guys. These are questions that we found are somewhat revolutionary, and it's sort of funny because they're really simple. Who the hell are the living, breathing human beings who are actually going to part with their hard-earned dollars to watch your movie? Where in the world are they and online? And how do you get their email addresses? I know that sounds really silly, but I'm going to tell you why. All of the technology tools out there, including social media, are just tools for us to master our universe. So we're going to think of some concentric circles, and the outermost concentric circle is everyone you don't know, and that's most of the people, right? That's the ether. And then there's an much smaller concentric circle, which is everyone you can touch currently through social media platforms. And then you can reach them, but not consistently, right? A lot of our feeds are time-based, or in Facebook's case, some weird algorithm they refuse to tell us how they calculate, stuff like that. It's just not that reliable. And then inside that circle is everybody who's taken an action through social media whose email address you now have. And because we all have our phones in our pockets all the time, you are actually guaranteed to reach somebody in their inbox. Whether or not they open it now comes with how much they give a shit about you, which we will talk about creating that in a little bit. And then, of course, we can see from the data that the highest rate of conversion, the most successful way to get someone to take an action is still through an email. Well, the most successful way to get someone to take an action is through a word-of-mouth recommendation. The second most successful way to get someone to take an action is through an email address. And so, when we meet filmmakers all the time who are like, well, I have 200,000 likes on Facebook. And I'm like, cool, but you got 12 people to show up to a screening. So you've proven to me that you're really good at getting likes on Facebook, and you're really bad at getting people to show up to a screening, because actually Facebook is not the best way to get people to show up to stuff. Emails and word-of-mouth recommendations still are. So it's about making people care and being able to reach them directly and quickly. Here's the other thing. When we ask filmmakers this question, who the hell is your audience, they like to say things like, well, my film is for everyone. And then I make a snotty joke, which sometimes doesn't play well in the South, so forgive me. I say, well, there's this book called the Bible, and it has had the longest and most expensive marketing campaign in the history of media, and still not everyone has read that, right? Nor do they even want to. So let's take for fact that your film is not for everyone. Let's get a little more specific. And then because I've given a really snotty example, they go, fine, fine. My film is for women between the ages of 24 and 35. Okay, so demographics. We've been taught a lot about, talking about the demographics that our film is targeted at. Well, these women are all between the ages of 24 and 35. And I'm gonna wager to guess that they don't talk to their friends in the same way, they don't read the same blogs, they probably don't frequent the same social media platforms, they definitely don't hang out in the same places, and they sure as shit don't watch the same movies. So let's get a little, and so here's the other thing. If you are a film studio and you have a $150 million marketing budget, you can use what we like to call the spray and pray method. And you go, $150 million to market to all the women between the ages of 24 and 35. And then they can hope that the 10 or 15 million women who actually would have seen that movie in the first place will come see it, and they have justified their jobs, and they have wasted a ton of other people's money, and that's why we are where we are in the film business today. I don't think most filmmakers whose marketing budgets are often limited to their elbow grease can do the spray and pray method because it's not efficient. So I'm encouraging us to be efficient. You're gonna start very simply. Who has a film right now that they're thinking about crowdfunding? Ido, can you give us the logline and brief synopsis of your film?
Sure. It's a story about a group of people who go on a team building expedition that turns into a struggle for survival in the woods.
Whoa! Who wants to see that movie? Awesome. Okay, good. Look around. Wait, raise your hands one more time, really quickly. Okay, great. So I'm gonna start with you. What social media platforms are you on?
I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Ido, you should be taking notes. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And where do you get your news?
Probably from The Daily Show, primarily.
Heck yes. Okay, so you have an audience who likes satire. This is important. A smart audience who likes satire. No, me too. And BuzzFeed, I'm not gonna lie. What kind of music do you listen to?
I listen to a wide variety of hip hop to jazz to indie rock.
Okay. What was the last? Did you listen to anything on your way over here?
I was actually listening to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Oh, so can we be friends? So satire is big right now. And what do you read any blogs regularly? Are there any bloggers or people on Twitter you follow whose stuff you like? Melissa Silverstein, Seth Godin, Women on Hollywood, Thompson on Hollywood.
I primarily read my sister's blog.
Oh, what's her blog?
Mama Needs a Beer.
Again, so a lot of satire in your life.
Yeah,
okay, cool. And where do you spend your free time when you have it?
I either spend it making music in my apartment or at the movies or just out with friends.
You make music?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And then what kind of music do you make?
Primarily like indie rock.
Okay. Oversight in the what music do you listen to question answering, so you have to get specific with your questions. And do you belong to any groups, church groups, sports teams, hangout groups, Google groups, anything like that?
I'm on Meetup, and yeah, I'm part of a church youth group, and I'm also in grad school for that as well.
Oh, and you have an alumni association that you can reach out to?
Yes.
Okay, these are very important details. When are you online? What times of day primarily, or are you like always connected?
Primarily when I wake up, sadly, and then in the
Right, roll
afternoon.
over, grab your phone, check
Yeah.
all your Twitter notifications. We're gonna be best friends. And then in the evenings, or?
When I'm procrastinating, yes.
Okay, perfect. Who else raised their hand to see Ido's film? Are you on social media?
Yes.
Where are you on social media?
Pretty much everywhere in MySpace.
Still on MySpace. I still on MySpace. Dude, the reboot was really sexy. It just is terrible. There's nobody there. It's just you and me. Basically, yeah, totally. So all the social media platforms. Do you have a favored spot where you're updating more than any other place?
Professionally and like culturally on Twitter.
On Twitter, okay.
Personally on Facebook.
Great. Okay, so where you're getting your sort of cultural news and interacting culturally is on Twitter, right? Okay. And where do you get your news? Are you getting it from Twitter?
Mostly, yeah.
Who do you click through on most often? You notice? Is it like Huffington Post? Is it the New York Times? Is it CNN?
I hate all of those.
You hate all those.
I'll scan the headlines.
Altnet. Or,
I'll confess to the Daily Show thing.
yeah.
You know, honestly, a lot of it comes from my wife who goes, "Did you see this thing on BuzzFeed?" And I say, "I'm not reading BuzzFeed."
Except
But,
you
yeah,
do.
Like,
Except
no,
now
I
you
know,
do.
I know.
was-
Like, she tells me, like,
Right, okay.
the one thing a day that, like, I gotta know.
Okay. That's actually also important information, that he gets a lot of his news via BuzzFeed, via his wife, so it's word of mouth right here.
Curator.
Yeah, he's the curator. What kind of music do you listen to?
I did, so mostly. it's
So
the
Frozen,
soundtracks,
just
yeah.
Frozen.
Well,
Okay.
turns out.
Okay.
Our, you know, playlist.
I swear to God, if I hear that song one more time. Do you read any blogs?
I don't. I mean, I'll again scan the headlines, but there's nobody I read like religiously.
Who do you follow on Twitter that you like a lot? These are hard
I
questions.
do like Seth Godin.
Yep.
Ann
Who's that?
Thompson.
Seth Godin?
Yeah. when
Ann
she-
Thompson.
Gary Vaynerchuk's awesome.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of people in the film world. I mean.
Doesn't have to be people in the film
Yeah.
world. Anybody. So, and you will just in this exercise, you'll see why you can't only do this with filmmakers,
Mhm.
right? Because we have some commonalities always. Where do you spend your free time when you have it?
Home with my kids.
And when you watch stuff, where do you watch it? Do you watch on your iPad? Do you watch on your television? Do you watch in the theaters?
I don't go to theaters anymore. 'Cause I
Okay.
have children.
Yep.
And except when I'm at festivals. I watch things on my large monitor,
Mhm.
when it's stuff
Computer.
you can't see,
Uh-huh.
which is a lot of indie film, unfortunately.
Right.
And when it's stuff I can't see, it's on television with Apple TV.
Great. And how about you? I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you. Where do you watch stuff? Do you curl up with your computer, or are you watching on your TV?
Curl up with my computer or at a movie theater.
And on your computer, is it a subscription service like Netflix?
I actually try and do as much free stuff, so on Hulu.
Hulu.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So ad-supported stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All of this is
Great.
very, very good information. And guess what, guys? We are already crowdfunding. Here's the thing about crowdfunding. It's a compound word. It's made up of two words. And one of those words is more important than the other word. And the way that you can tell is because it comes first. And if I could go back to the inception of when we started calling this thing that radio stations have been doing for a zillion years and nonprofits have been doing for a zillion years, when we decided to codify that as crowdfunding, I really wish they had made the word kind of like Prince did, crowd dash 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 arrow funding. You can't fund without a built crowd, okay? And this specificity is how you start to understand how to build that crowd, because you start to understand your crowd is made up of real people who do real things in the world, and those real things will help you understand how to communicate to them, where to communicate with them, and lots of other things that are important. You're going to start to learn how to talk about your projects, what you're saying, where you're saying it, and who and what sorts of things will help you amplify the message. Alumni organizations, right? Church groups, if you're going super locally, all sorts of things that you can learn about your crowd that will help you learn how to talk about your project. Because if you want to build a relationship with your audience over time, it is up to you to keep them abreast of the situation. And if you want to get really, I used to shy away from this, but I'm just not going to anymore because I think it's time that we just do this. Building an independent relationship with your audience is being a film entrepreneur. And that means thinking of your audience as your customers and your brand, which is your unique voice as a storyteller, as your business. And that means there is never a moment in which your customers are not important. You never get to have a day where you're like, they don't matter. This is the world that we're living in now. And if you want to make an independent living as an artist, which I want you to be able to do, this is part of your job now. And in fact, it's always been part of your job. Certainly if you wanted to make money at this, it always was. The cool thing is, this kind of information can actually make you a better artist. One, because if you acknowledge your audience as real people instead of as these sort of like automatons who show up, you'll stop saying things like, I don't want to pander to my audience, because of course that means you think your audience is stupid. And I encourage all of you to always believe that your audience is at least as smart as you think you are. I would also just say that, you know, for my part, we adopted this wish list crowdfunding model to finance my first feature called Like the Water, and we, you know, typed a wedding registry into a WordPress website and sent it out to everyone we knew. And we listed all the things that we knew we needed, right? Everything from cameras and car rentals to bug spray, sunscreen, props, AC kits, and things like that. But we also included a description of what we were trying to accomplish, and as a result started getting offers of locations, goods, and services that we never would have anticipated being able to ask for. And it turned, we rewrote the script to accommodate some of the locations, and we looked like a many $million-dollar indie movie as a result, right? And that was because our crowd had a better idea of what this thing could become than we did. It helped us expand our understanding of how great a film this could be. And it's our first feature, it has first feature problems, but it's way better as a result of having gotten our crowd involved. I just want to pause here, and the reason that I do this in the beginning is because I believe strongly the medium is the message. We have to talk in the beginning about partnerships, because if you think you're going to leverage institutional partnerships to help you raise money or distribute your film, you have to be thinking about that stuff way in advance. The ACLU, the NAACP, the baseball team across the street, all these organizations have their own institutional objectives. They have stuff planned out way in advance, and it takes a long time to get brands and nonprofits involved with you. So you have to know when you're reaching out to them what they're trying to accomplish. Nonprofits are trying to raise money for themselves all the time. If you're going to give them a reason to help you raise money for your thing ahead of them raising money for their thing, they better have a really good sense of what they're going to get in return. And so you should never approach them even until you're really clear about what you can offer that helps them accomplish their goals. Particularly if it's a documentary, you can provide them probably lots of footage that will help them put together materials for their outreach. But also if you have good reach, if you've built a big crowd, it's way easier to get brands involved. Just look at every YouTube star that's out there, right? They've gone from making pittance per view, even though they're getting millions and millions of views, to millions of dollars a year because brands reach out to them directly and say, you're the new face of Sprite or whatever. But the other thing is that you never know who is going to be willing to partner with you along the way. So this class that you're taking right now, we are teaching in 33 cities in 65 days. I think we have 12 cities to go. We are in a car that has the hashtag Stay Indie Tour written on the side of it. And we wanted to let everyone in our community know that we were going to be in 33 cities in 65 days. Largely, I'm not going to lie, to get as many great restaurant recommendations as we could. But some cool things happened, right? People who knew people we knew showed up to the classes, which was great. And then a friend of mine who just started a company called RushTerra, which does fast file transfer of very, very high quality files, said, hey, we're just launching. You're about to get in front of like 1,500 filmmakers. We need to get in front of those filmmakers. What can we offer you and them to make this like a good deal? So they gave us $1,000 for gas money. They're giving you guys a month for free, which I will send out either through the festival or just if you signed up for this class ahead of time, I have your email address. And then they're getting exposure to 1,500 filmmakers. All of this is a really good deal for everyone. And that's kind of how partnerships have to work. They've got to be good for the audience and for both partners. But usually it doesn't happen that quickly. So just be prepared to be really patient and persistent. So those questions, those really specific audience questions that we got at, are really at helping you understand your tone in your outreach as a filmmaker. And the cool thing that I really want to be clear about is that your tone is really just about the intersection between who you are and who you want to reach. And for those of us who fear that social media might suck out our very souls, there's all this stuff that you don't have to give away in the process of using social media as part of your outreach to bring people from the ether into the center, right? And also, of course, I didn't ask anybody really any personal information other than the family stuff that was revealed voluntarily, because actually it doesn't usually matter, certainly in the beginning. So this all belongs, and then of course, if you are a person who is particularly personal on your many social media outlets, if it turns out that your audience is on those social media outlets and you're going to be using those social media outlets as part of, you know, outreach for your brand, you might want to scale back the amount of breakfast things that you list on your, or whatever, you know, the personal dark nights of the soul that you talk about on your social media. And the way that you get at tone is through experimentation. You actually start testing things out. So 2.5 years ago when we started the company, the golden rule in social media was 3-to-1. 3 posts about other things for every 1 self-promotional post. Last year, about 18 months ago, they said it was 5-to-1. And this year they are saying 9-to-1. What does that mean? That means that if you're going to be successful on social media, you have to become a hub of interesting information about things. And the cool thing is that you don't always have to test your tone with your own material. You can post clips from The Daily Show that you think are particularly funny and apt for whatever your subject matter is. You can write about other thrillers that you love. You can post links to recent films that you think your audience will be into. You can become that word of mouth recommendation. But you also want to make sure that you're testing your own materials. And you can start small with a group of trusted individuals. Which of these 5 poster images do you like, or sort of still images do you like? Which of these 5 different messages appeal to you most? And understand that your audience won't usually be spoken to in a single voice, right? So you're gonna have the people who are really gonna dig the satire, and you're gonna have some people who want more of like the horror thriller thing going on, right? There are some basic pro tips around your messaging. And the first is not pleading. I'm sure all of you have seen the Kickstarter desperation message of, if you don't donate in the next, no, it's all caps. So it's, if you don't donate in the next 2 hours, we won't get any money and then we won't be able to make this film. Please, anything you can help. Now, there's a lot of things wrong with that. The first of which is, if anybody does actually take an action as a result of that, it is for 2 reasons. It is because they feel guilty, or it's hush money. They want you to shut up and go away. And those are powerful motivators, but they are shitty audience builders. Because the point is that you want these people to come back and watch your movie and tell all their friends about it. If you literally took nothing else away from today, what I would like you to take away is that you never ask for help with a donation, because actually, from a tax perspective, they are not donations, they are contributions, but that you always ask for someone to join what you're offering with a contribution. And the reason that that's important is that that indicates that I am contributing something and you are contributing something, and together we're making something happen, okay? Altruism is a wonderful way to fill up that 9-to-1 ratio. Promote your friend's work. Talk about a friend's show that's happening in Memphis. Post a link to some music that you're thinking about maybe using for your film and see how people react to it. I'll give you some other examples of altruism along the way. Helping others is a wonderful way to gather a community of support. And I actually fundamentally do not believe that we live in this culture of scarcity that we've been made to believe as filmmakers. I do not believe that an audience for her is not an audience for me. If she builds an audience of people who really like women-made films, that is obviously good for me, but it's actually good for all of us. Because I guarantee you some of her audience is some of Ito's audience, is some of your audience, is some of his audience. Because actually part of what we're doing is just teaching everyone that independent film is a cool and fun space to be in. Authenticity is listed on here, and it's sort of funny, but if you are a person who is not naturally effusive and you don't want to put exclamation points at the end of everything, your social media tone should not be that way, because you will start to hate yourself as you are posting on social media, and then you will stop doing it. And of course, the most consistent thing here is, or the most important thing here is that you have to be consistent. So make sure that the tone also still fits in the pink circle somewhere, right? It's still part of who you are. That's gonna help you a lot. There's 2 tweets here that I love. How many of you are on Twitter? Great, the rest of you fix it. And the reason is that this is, first of all, the filmmaking community is on Twitter. So if you want to find those people who are going to help you and collaborate with you and all those things, the vast majority of them are on Twitter right now. The other thing is it's a great place to start message testing. Nia on Vacation was a filmmaker based in New York, and she started crowdfunding in the last week that a film in LA called In Honor Of was wrapping up their campaign. Nia on Vacation is a sort of Eat, Pray, Love-esque, you know, young 20-something goes off to Greece and finds herself. In Honor Of was a feature film about an honor killing. These are not necessarily overlapping audiences, but that didn't matter. These are 2 independent films, they need support. Nia on Vacation tweets, so much great independent film to support at Seed&Spark. In Honor Of film is almost at their goal, make it happen here. Well now, so that's a really good argument for culture of plenty. This is a woman who believes that asking people to crowdfund somebody else's film does not impede her ability to crowdfund on her own, that she has to be a resource of cool opportunities for things that people can join. And also, what do you suppose happens when In Honor Of film hits their goal? Well, they turn around and they promote Nia on Vacation for the next several weeks because now they're done crowdfunding and they've got to fill their 9 to 1, right? Sean Mannion I will talk about a lot. He tweets, are you a fan of Vigalando's Time Crimes? It inspired our short Time Signature, currently on Seed&Spark. He had a real sense of other things that his audience might like. He wanted to let his audience know the world of creative inspiration from whence he came. And he tagged Vigalando, he tagged Seed&Spark, he made a hashtag for his project instead of its own Twitter handle, and now there's lots of reasons for people to retweet him. How are you guys doing so far? All this making sense? Great. Okay, so part of the purpose of this sort of 9 to 1, and certainly the hallmark of any successful crowdfunding campaign, is the demonstration, or the creation and demonstration of momentum, and the communication of the inevitability of success. Specifically about crowdfunding, we see most crowdfunding campaigns go like this. They hit 30% in their first week, the successful crowdfunding campaigns. They have 2 terrible, terrifying, flat middle weeks, called the doldrums, and then because of all the desperation in here, the last week is really big. And what we have seen from using the techniques in this project is this starts to flatten out, and you're just on a trajectory towards success. Momentum is really important. You do need to expect the first 30% of your crowdfunding campaign will come from your community. This is true across platforms. Why? Well, if you're at 2% in week 2, that demonstrates one of 2 things to strangers, and strangers like to pick winners. One is that you're not trying very hard. There's no inevitability of success in there. And the other is that your friends and family know you're a crook, and they're not trusting you with their money, right? So you have to demonstrate to strangers that you have some social capital before strangers will jump on board and give their money to you. We're gonna get into some specifics of crowdfunding right now. This one is my favorite. Arriving at the plan. How much? We get asked this all the time. How much should I raise? I have 1,000 Facebook friends. How much should I raise? I have no idea. So all I can tell you is that you need to raise what you need, not how much you think you can get and not how much you want. And similarly in investments, you shouldn't just make films for however dastardly much money you can raise. Like, this is also about building a business model that will sustain you, right? So think about, of course, how much production will cost, and make sure you put in your 15% cushion. How much distribution will cost, and do you think this is such a badass film that you don't want to wait for Dan Guando to decide? He's going to be so mad that I picked on him. You don't want to wait for Dan to decide whether or not this is an Academy qualifying film. You might want to guarantee that you can qualify the film yourself. And on a platform like Tugg, that'll cost you about 20 grand to get the Academy qualifyings in New York and LA. You need Blu-rays, you need DVDs, you need DCPs, and of course, don't forget that when you're offering incentives as part of your crowdfunding campaign, that costs money to fulfill. We'll get to that in a second. Most importantly, that you raise enough to deliver on the promises in your pitch, which is why I will say, I do not want anybody to use keep what you can crowdfunding ever, unless it turns out you could do everything that you're promising without any of the money at all. Why? If you are crowdfunding for something that you say is going to cost $50,000 to produce and you raise 10, there are two things that can happen. You don't make the thing that you promised and now you've burned a bunch of people, or you make the $10,000 version of the thing that you promised, not taking into account that the people who gave you that $10,000 were giving it against the $50,000 promise, not the $10,000 one. And the thing is that crowdfunding is a privilege that is bestowed upon us by our audiences. It is not a right. And if we do not respect that privilege, it will go away. Every individual person who engages in crowdfunding is responsible to the future of crowdfunding for making sure that they do what they say and they say what they mean and they deliver on those promises. And I'll tell a quick story here. We had a filmmaker named Liam Brady who wanted to raise money for a film called Fog City. And what he knew for sure is that he didn't think he could get to 30% of a budget that he was excited about on his first go. He was at NYU, he was a Tisch graduate student, and they really teach those Tisch kids to be auteurs, and they don't tell them shit about what the real world is going to be like. So he's graduating school and he's looking to the future and he's saying, man, I don't have an audience at all. Like I have like a couple hundred Facebook friends, and there's like a tough age to be if you didn't have Facebook and stuff in college. Like for me, I didn't have any, there was not, like instant messaging came out my junior year of college and it caused a lot of drama. But there's this funny age to be, so I'm 34, and you look at me and you're like, oh, she should know everything about digital nativity, but like I didn't get to Facebook until way late. I missed Friendster altogether, and so it took me a long time to catch up. And there are a lot of, I think, filmmakers who are sort of mid-career right now who are like, but wait, I wasn't there for that. How can I possibly expect to be expert at this? And the cool thing is you can do it slowly. So Liam said, I have this script that I've been developing a long time. I got a grant from the Spike Lee Foundation that I think will cover just a small portion of the production. He wrote the feature version first, and then he scaled it back to a short, and he was looking at it and he was saying, you know, it's not quite there yet, and I think I'm gonna need to have some good cast in it, and there were just all these elements, and he's like, I need to get this thing going, because if he didn't do it, he wouldn't graduate. I don't know, there's like a time period in which they have to produce these films. And he only had a certain size community so far. He like didn't have a Twitter account yet, he had a couple hundred friends on Facebook. So he says, I'm going to raise money for development, because I don't even think the script is to a place where I can actually tell you accurately how much production will cost. So he did a development wish list for $6,000, and he was raising money for script readings, paying the actors, paying for the space, producing some marketing materials, bringing on a casting director, and getting the movie really ready to go into pre-production. He was very specific about how far the $6,000 would take him, and then at the end of the period, he would throw a party and screen his previous works to sort of give everybody a sense of where this was going to go. He runs a great campaign, very targeted, very specific. He raises $6,600 in like 35 days, and he proceeds to do absolutely everything that he promised. And he keeps his supporters, of course, updated the whole time that he is delivering on his promises. As a result of that development period, he was approached by a couple of the people in his community who had found out about his film and they said, I want to get involved in a more material way. He developed the script to the place where he thought it was ready to shoot. He budgeted it. It was going to be $33,000 for production. They shot the entire thing on the Alexa on 6K RAW, which I'm still mad about. I don't think that was the appropriate choice. And they shot the whole thing on Steadicam, right? So there were real costs associated with this thing. $33,000 his production budget, but because these people had reached out to him during this development phase, which he was doing publicly, he felt pretty confident he could reach that goal. He actually ended up raising $35,000 in 30 days. And he was very specific, this is just for production. He goes into production, and 9 months later, after he's done with production and he's halfway through the edit, he comes back with a really irreverent pitch video for what is an otherwise quite serious film about a veteran who's sort of lost in the world, because he knew how he could talk to his crowd now. He really had a sense of who they were and how they liked to be spoken to. And he raised the $6,000 for post, really quickly. And now he raised $57,000 for a short film, which is now going into the festival circuit, and it is beautiful. But more than anything, he screened it in a room about this size in a basement place in San Francisco called Viracocha. And I went up because he was one of the first projects on Seed&Spark, and I introduced it with him, and I got chills talking about it because the people in the room were weeping watching this film, which was a rough cut screening. And it's hard for professionals to watch rough cuts, like a bunch of people who don't know, and they were so moved just by having participated. They saw their own cars and their own homes on screen. It was a very cool experience. And now Liam has built this much wider community because he's engaged in this process over time. So that's kind of cool. And he's delivered on the promises in his pitch at each time. Yes, Eva.
What was the name of the movie?
Fog City.
Fog City. And so is it possible to go on Seed&Spark and actually follow the process?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to Fog City and you can go back through his updates and see how he did it. Liam is a writer. We'll talk about updates in a little bit. His updates are quite writerly. Sometimes I'm like, Liam, just shut up and show me stills of the film. But he really worked for his crowd. Like, he knew how to address them. The second major thing in crowdfunding campaigns is, of course, the incentives that you're going to deliver. Because you have been interacting so much with your crowd now, you know enough about them to know a lot about what they want and what they don't want. And generally speaking, other than the really rad designs out here, the $5 t-shirts, incredible. I think you're missing on a profit margin there, I have to say. But most people don't want t-shirts and mugs, and they're expensive to make and they're expensive to ship, and we are not manufacturers, we're filmmakers. Let's not proliferate stuff. Your $10 to $25 incentive is the one of which you will distribute the most. Most people contribute at the $10 to $25 level, and what we want those to do for you is do the work of creating evangelists. And so think about ways you can turn that incentive level into something that is personal, visual, and shareable, and I will explain what I mean. Sean Mannion, who I warned you I would tell you a lot about, in his film called Time Signature, I contributed $25 in like the second or third day of his campaign because he had this cool first week incentive that was something about time travel. I didn't really pay attention to it. I was like, time travel, I'm in. And he writes back to me 15 minutes after I make the contribution, and he says, thank you so much, really means a lot to me. All the things that you have to say, meticulous gratitude and instant gratitude, are very important parts of this. And he says, if you could go anywhere in time, where would you go? And I am apparently really boring because I typed back and sent the first thing that came to my mind, which was to the signing of the Magna Carta. I hate everything that probably says about me. 20 minutes later, I got a Twitter notification that said, we found at Emily Best at the signing of the Magna Carta, where will we find you? And in the upper right hand of that photograph is my dumb face, which he had pulled off my LinkedIn profile. And I thought this was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. First of all, because I was like, there's no way he's going to get me to the signing of the Magna Carta. There was certainly no way I expected he would do it within 15 minutes, and as skillfully. And now what's happened? So he's delivered on a promise. He's demonstrated to me that he's a trustworthy artist. He's delighted and sort of tickled me. And this is still my Facebook background picture because this was the day I discovered that my haircut is the 13th century friar. And he made it shareable. So this was actually part of the assets that he was promoting out. These photos became a gallery on his Facebook page and on his website and part of sort of the world of his film. So now I'm drawn into the world of his film and I am sharing the shit out of it. And I know that I am personally responsible for no fewer than 7 further contributions. So he turned $25 into $200 with a single image, right? And that's what I'm talking about. Is that yes, of course this costs time, but he figured out something that he can do quickly and skillfully. But it drew me into the world of his film and it turned me into an amplifier, not at the end of the campaign, during the campaign. It created momentum. And of course, every time another one of these photos popped up, we were all looking at it and sharing it because every single one of them was more delightful than the last. My colleague, Erica, contributed, and she said she wanted to go to the moon landing because she's way cooler than I am, and he found a picture of her in her Facebook feed riding a camel, making this hilarious face riding a camel, and so she's riding a camel on the moon landing. It's incredible. So your incentives can do more work for you than just like giving people something in exchange for their contribution. They can contribute to momentum. Create a first day only incentive that gets a bunch of money into the campaign right out the gate. And offering pre-sales is what a lot of crowdfunding is sort of classified as, and I think that is missing an opportunity. It's not that exciting to pre-buy a film for like 10 bucks. Like, you can do that on iTunes and whatever, and even iTunes is saying, unless they're offering crazy extras, it doesn't work all that well, right? So you want to give people, roll out the virtual red carpet for these people and give them the sense that they are walking the red carpet with you down to the premiere in whatever virtual way you can. A password protected link that you can only get at the exact moment that the film premieres at the Indie Memphis Film Festival, no matter where you are, something like that. And of course the delivery really, really matters. Zach Braff raised for something $5 million for I wish, I can never do this, wish I was here. Wish I was here. Wish you were here? Wish I was here. Wish I were here? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he raised from like 40,000 backers. And then he handed off the delivery of the streaming incentive to Warner Brothers, which was a massive mistake because we all know that Warner Brothers' streaming platform sucks, and if you didn't know that then, now you know. And so 40,000 people had a crappy experience cashing in on the incentive that they were so excited to get. That's a lot of people to burn on crowdfunding. It's also a lesson on not handing off your relationship with your audience to somebody who doesn't care about it as much as you do. Make sure you budget for the delivery of the incentives, as I said before. That means time also, right? So if all of a sudden you have a $25 incentive that takes you 30 to 45 minutes to do, like what happens if you're really successful and 400 people buy that? Like you're stuck behind your computer forever. Wrap party and premiere party invites. We work in the film business and we are used to the premiere parties, but you know, wrap parties and inviting people to finally see the two PAs whose sexual tension has boiled over finally until they consummated at the wrap party, that's very entertaining to share with people. Specialty screenings. Reach out to your local indie theaters and your screening houses. Check in with Tugg and see what kind of things you can promise to bring your community together in a real space for a real-time screening. On-set meals, that's super fun. Even somehow filmmaking can make glamorous sitting at a plastic fold-out table eating out of a to-go box. It's kind of phenomenal. Extras and walk-ons. I saw a film at a festival that was crowdfunded last October, and it was not good. The film was not good. But there was one scene in it that had this character that was only in this one scene, and the scene itself was kind of a revelation. I was like, oh, that was so kind of funny and weird and cool. It takes place in this thrift store. And it turns out that guy had bought the right to have an under 5-line role in the movie, and he was the best thing about the movie. So also don't assume that the people who are buying their way onto set are going to stink at it. And in fact, in my experience, extras who pay to be there show up way more on time than extras who are being paid to be there. So there's that also. And then of course, humor and irreverence work really well in the incentive space. And if that doesn't work for your film, you can figure out other ways to kind of tease and entice people. The pitch video. So you guys, I don't know where somebody wrote and released a handbook that I haven't been able to find and squash, that pitch videos have to start with the director talking into the camera. It is the weirdest thing to me. So here's what I see all the time, hi, my name is Emily Best. I'm the writer, director, actor, and producer of Very Scary Movie. Very Scary Movie is a terrifying ride into the inner workings of Memphis's underbelly. And in a moment, I'll have our cinematographer talk to you about what he's going to do. First of all, don't ever have your cinematographer talk on camera. Just don't do it. Like, let the cinematographer do what the cinematographer's good at and show you shit through the lens of a camera. If your movie, so your pitch video is a small movie, right? And it is a small movie to demonstrate to people that they should give you money to make a much larger movie. So your small movie cannot suck, and your small movie has to give us an indication of what the longer movie is going to be about. So if your longer movie is not about a dorky person talking to the camera, then don't make the first 15 seconds of your video a dorky person talking to the camera. I don't get it. Like, let's not do that anymore. The first 15 seconds of your video have to be for the audience of the film you are asking to make. And if that means you have to make a supercut of other films that inspire you, we had a feminist grindhouse flick, and those are expensive to make. So she took her favorite feminist moments from all these grindhouse flicks and created this amazing supercut for like 7 seconds, and then all of a sudden her face appears on screen, and I was like, did she just make me feel that way? I'm in. But before that, I had no context in which to give a shit about her face, right? I'm sorry, that's crude, but it's true. So if it's funny, if you're making a comedy, make me laugh in the first 15 seconds, probably sooner. If it's a thriller, scare me. If it is drama, make me feel something. Give me a sense that you are capable of doing the thing that you are promising me, rather than telling me that you are capable of doing the thing that you're promising. Which again, for visual storytellers, weird choice. 2 years ago when we started the company, people were watching pitch videos for 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Now they watch them for about 90 seconds before they decide what they're going to do. You have 90 seconds to say, why me, why this, why now, and why you, the audience, right? Here's why this team is making this thing. I'm going to speak from my heart to you about why this thing really matters. And because you do have to have the personal appeal, just don't make it be the first thing. And you have to tell people what it is you need the money for. The wish list on Seed&Spark really helps with a lot of that, but it really can help put it into context. Try to keep the words help and donate out of your pitch video. Thank you. Okay, we're in Act 2 of this movie that is the Crowdfunding to Build Independence workshop. And now we're getting into like the dark, confusing point. I don't think we're gonna have a false resolution. We might. But we're going to get into this, and it's going to be a lot of information. And again, all of this is available to you online, so don't hurt your wrists. This is about the pre-production, the materials gathering and organizing for your, yeah, I'm sorry. I just, no, you're not rude at all. I'm rude making you stand there this whole time. I kept being like, he probably has to leave. He probably has to leave. So this is your pre-production for your campaign. And like pre-production for your film, you probably can't be doing anything else while you are doing this process. Starts with the organization of your direct outreach. You're going to gather all of the email addresses that you and your team have, and you're going to divide them into probably 3 segments. And the first is the people who you're sure are going to contribute. And you're going to reach out to them well in advance to let them know what you're doing, and you're going to ask them to commit to a day 1 contribution, and you're going to ask them also to give you a sense of like how much they're willing to contribute. And the reason you're going to do that is because you want to take the people who say, you know, I'm good for like $500 or $1,000, and ask them to maybe wait till the 2nd week where they can run matching contributions to sort of help you out of the doldrums in week 2, right? And that will give you a sense of where you know you can get on day 1. That's very helpful. The second group of email addresses is people who will probably need a little bit of personal appeal, but are also kind of in the likely to contribute category. And then the third is like everybody your Gmail inbox has been gathering for ages and ages, and you'll put those like into a MailChimp so you can message them consistently and they can unsubscribe so you don't piss anybody off, things like that. You're also going to gather the images and the words and the videos that you and your team have figured out through message testing work really well in communicating this stuff. So your team is kind of speaking with one voice about the project, even as they're personalizing particular things. It's also, you need to go. Yeah, no, please. This is the boring part anyway. You don't really
sorry.
No, no.
Maybe there was one.
Oh, thank you.
I apologize.
No, that's, she passed notes in class. Yeah, and of course, if you have partnerships who are going to help you with your outreach, make sure they have the materials they need, that they're scheduled for the right days, that they know what they're supposed to be saying to whom and when. And then, of course, anywhere you have direct access to people, your alumni mailing lists, your church group, Google group, or whatever it is that you have. I have a sports team that I play on, and so I would email them. That part is really important. And the reason the organization is important is to know if I have 200 email addresses that fall into that second category, I need to make a schedule for when I'm going to write to them, because I'm not going to do it all in one day. I know that about myself. So can I sort of commit to 10 per day? That's part of the pre-production work. Your updates. Every crowdfunding tool has the capacity to update the supporters who have come onto the campaign, your supporters and followers. The updates are where you can turn them again into evangelists. This needs to be planned for shareable visual content. It needs to constantly feel the momentum and announce the inevitability of success. So any press or interviews or outtake videos from your pitch video, again, these things need to be delightful. They need to be in the visual storytelling medium. They should be brief, and they should always, both your direct outreach and your updates, include shareable language. Don't make me figure out the tweet to compose out of the update that you just sent me. Compose it for me so I can copy and paste it. And that way, if you reach me in my inbox, you turn me into a social media amplifier. If you reach me through the updates, you turn me into a social media amplifier. You can even use tools like Click to Tweet. This is a really cool tool. You just go to the website, Click to Tweet, and you pre-compose a tweet, and it generates a link for you. And you can put that in, and I click on it. It opens my Twitter with the tweet that you wrote, already composed, and all I have to do is hit send. It's awesome. Love it. These are the sorts of things that you want to be prepared to do and thoughtful about how you're going about them. Your social media, of course, if you're going to maintain a 9-to-1, you've got to have a plan for how you're going to maintain that. Do some research in advance around your project. What things are coming up that will be important to tweet about? What events will you be at that will create lots of fodder for social media? How many selfies with Ito can you get at the Indie Memphis Film Festival? That might be my next tactic. How much of your friends' work can you promote, and how much can you leverage those thank yous to entice and tease? This is, you probably can't see this from here. This is a still from, so my friend Max contributed to Sean Mannion's campaign after I did, and he asked to be transported to the fictitious moment in history when Forrest Gump and JFK meet. And if you can't see from there, over JFK's left shoulder is a guy who looks like he just doesn't quite belong there. He's sort of lurking in the background. That's my friend Max. And all it says at the bottom of this is get yours here in the bit.ly link. It's very enticing, right? Because you're looking at this going, wait, what's different about it? Wait, who's that guy? Now you're on somebody's crowdfunding page and he sucked you into his universe. And of course, if you do all this in advance, you will also have time to think about the things that make crowdfunding actually enjoyable. Events, kickoff events. I see this all the time. I was in Seattle recently and stapled to a bunch of the telephone poles were Kickstarter kickoff event for my band, and they were doing a show, right, to get people excited about the album that was coming out. Things that demonstrate, I mean, you guys are at a film festival, at one that makes you feel the love and spirit of the community so profoundly. If you can create even a modicum of this feeling out of an event from your campaign, you will be doing the entire film industry a huge service, but also to the community that's building around you to know, these are real people who care about this thing and are enjoying themselves. Matching contributions, as we talked about, contests, an NSA thriller called If There's a Hell Below was crowdfunding on Seed&Spark, and they had an amazing, perfectly smooth trajectory up to 130% funded. In their third week, they took a risk only to engage with 3 geographic locations that they knew their audiences were mostly hanging out. Portland, Oregon, where they're from, Madison, Wisconsin, where they went to school, and Washington, D.C., where they had some family. And they pit these 3 cities against each other in something they called the Funder Games. And it was after the second Hunger Games movie had come out, so it was timely. And they said the city that raises the most money in the next week will pull the premiere, right? So they started to think about where they wanted to screen theatrically. They made relationships with 3 screening venues in each of the cities to make sure that they could deliver on their promise. And Madison, Wisconsin won by a landslide. What I think is really interesting about this is that they decided to really specifically turn the people that they knew in each of the cities into amplifiers into those cities. And they were willing to kind of ignore everybody else for a week, but it was a very, very successful tactic. Does that all sound like a lot of work?
Yes.
Don't do it by yourself. It's really hard to crowdfund. It is a full-time job, but filmmaking, crowdfunding like filmmaking, and again, I think these things are basically the same at this point, it's a collaborative process. You need more than one person. I mean, for all the stuff that I just talked about, you need the person on your team who likes to geek out with spreadsheets. And then you also need the person who's really good at pithy posts, right? If I think about the way we've sort of accidentally assembled the team at Seed&Spark, we are absolutely a film set. And we are all filmmakers, but we have assembled sort of like you assemble a film set. Max, who's our ops guy, who loves nothing more than to meticulously organize and put things together, will make the greatest AD/line producer ever, but he's actually a cinematographer, and I like his meticulousness for that way. And Nicole, who's a recent college graduate, is the master of the pithy tweet. Right? And we needed these people all on the same team, understanding what the schedule is. And here's the thing. You're going to take all of this information and you're literally going to create a schedule that you can look at and point to and know what each day is going to be. And don't worry, the templates for these for the 6 weeks before your campaign and the 4 weeks of your campaign are available in the same spot that all this is, under Seed&Spark's how-to under a whole category called Awesome Downloads. All of this is here. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And you're going to leave room for new elements and obviously plan to learn from your crowd so that you're not saying the same boring stuff that you were saying in the first week and the final week, because it'll be fun in the first week and boring by the final week. How many of you are freelancers? Any freelancers in here? Right. So what you know as a freelancer for sure is that any moment you might book the job that will take you totally out of your life for 2 days, 3 days, a week, maybe more, and you need to take that job because it pays for your life. But if that happens during a crowdfunding campaign and you can't hand this schedule off to somebody else who understands how to implement it effectively, bye-bye crowdfunding campaign, because bye-bye momentum. We don't want that to happen to anyone. And this is really the easiest way to avoid it. Not all the time when you come up with the pitch video that you think is really great and the tweets that you think are so great, are you actually listening to your crowd, right? Sometimes we forget to look at our social media accounts about what actually got retweeted and what actually got reposted and what actually got comments. And instead we focused a little bit too much on the stuff that felt really good to write or the stuff that felt really good to tweet. You know those moments. Every director, every writer has that moment of you have to kill your darlings to really make something succeed. And that applies to crowdfunding as well. Sometimes your pitch video that you thought was so good, you didn't get feedback from people who were either willing to be honest with you or had enough distance from it that they could really understand how to give you feedback. You can fix it, and you don't have to stick to a failing plan. So you don't have to run headfirst into the abyss screaming, why isn't anybody contributing to my crowdfunding campaign? You can fix it. And you're going to fix it by continuing to stick to your schedule, but very closely reviewing the messaging and replacing what isn't working all the time. And that actually will usually keep you from ever feeling that your entire plan is failing. And this is one of our favorite things here. When you go from the ether, they didn't know you, to they found you through social media, and this is where you're doing a lot of your message testing, right, initially, is in social media, and you're asking people who would like to see this movie, and then you're doing interviews with them. That's important data, but now your best data is going to come from the people who come all the way into the center, they contribute to your campaign. They're the ones that you need to go back and do the original interview with. Where did they hang out online? Find more of those people. How do they like to be talked to? And this has to happen really a lot, particularly in the first couple weeks of your campaign. You've got to know as much about them as possible. Find out how they heard about you. Find out what made them contribute. Find out what would make them feel cool if they could share it. And most importantly, find out how they want to watch your film. Because if like 80% of them say, I'm gonna watch it on my tablet, don't shoot it in 6K RAW and waste all those terabytes of data. This is still also about building an economic model that is financially feasible and not just about what you as an artiste want for your movie. The harder part, and this is how you get away from sticking to a failing plan, the harder part is doing the interview with people you were sure were going to contribute and haven't. And maybe they're your best childhood friend, and maybe halfway through your campaign you have completely written them out of your lives because how dare she ever possibly not contribute to your campaign. Her name is Jessica. And then finally on the very last day of your campaign she finally contributes, and then all is forgiven. Save yourself the rage aneurysm and call those people and say, hey, have you heard about my campaign? I'd love to get some of your feedback. And they go, maybe, no, I didn't realize you were campaigning. And you're like, wow, I have a gap in my outreach methods, right? And they might be lying, but that's what you have to first assume. And the second is, yeah, I saw it. I'm just a lazy bastard and haven't gotten around to contributing yet. And then because you've called them, now they feel guilty, now they're gonna contribute, but they're gonna come back and like share your stuff because they're probably a decent friend. And then the third thing that might happen is they say, I'm really broke right now. I don't have the capability of contributing. And you're like, that's totally fine. Here's like 3 tweets. Would you mind sending them out over the next week or so? That would be a huge help to me. And the fourth thing might be a slight hesitation that makes you feel like there's something about what's going on that doesn't make them super excited. And that's when we actually recommend you get a neutral third party to start getting feedback on your pitch video for you. We do this for our filmmakers all the time, and we have salvaged some campaigns who recut their pitch video halfway through because they simply weren't getting to the audience in the way they thought. It's really important to get lots of external feedback and third-party feedback to see if you can really reach the people that you want to reach. So make sure you're doing this interview redux along the way. Now, as you are crowdfunding and you're continuing message testing, you're also going to do research that is more ways that you can reach out to your audience. And part of that is going to come from creating more opportunities for updates by being in the world, right? So all of crowdfunding doesn't happen behind a computer.
I got a question about that right there. You've mentioned Twitter and Facebook, but what about just blogs? Like, say for instance, I'm going to shoot a sci-fi movie or some kind of animation. What about going to blogs where people are talking about this stuff?
Absolutely, and that's the stuff that is revealed in your interviews with your crowd, right? If you're talking about sci-fi and animation and you have people who are like, ooh, I'd be into that movie, chances are, when you ask them the question, what blogs do you read, they're gonna give you their short list of where you need to be reaching out.
So you ask them,
yeah.
Ask them what blogs are.
Yeah, because you don't want to go to the blogs where none of your self-identified audience is showing up. Go to the blogs that they already read, right? You're like, I think my movie is like this. This blog had 437 comments about a movie that I think is like mine. I'm going to go to those people and see if I can get them to write about my movie. You know, and that's actually way easier than trying to do indie, because I'll tell you what, posts in IndieWire are barely a blip on the meter for most campaigns. We've seen one single very, very niche Tumblr blog bring thousands of dollars into a campaign, and I have yet to see an IndieWire article do anything near that. So everybody gets really obsessed with getting into the film press, and I am not at all convinced that that is where you should be. I think the more specific you are, the more successful you will be with stuff like that.
Okay, one more question.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of us that still don't have smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
What about, as opposed to, you know how a lot of people on the smartphones, they have their email address where their messages come right on their phone. Mm-hmm. What about the old regular SMS?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really good tools out there for SMSing. Some friends of mine just started a company called Get Simple Desk, and that is a way to get a bunch of people's...
Do you think that's still a good
Absolutely,
thing?
no. In fact, there's a lot of market research to suggest that getting into people's text messages is the next step closer even from emailing. So there are tools out there. let's see, Constant Contact allows you to create a number that people can text and sign up for your email list.
Yeah.
So that's a really good way to use it. And then Get Simple Desk allows you to get people to sign up for a mailing list with their cell phone numbers. So no, that's a great question. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. I want to give you an example of how you might find some specific blogs, and it involves telling a kind of embarrassing story. So come on a journey with me really momentarily. Last year, long before I moved to Los Angeles, and even when I was still really resisting LA, I grew up in Northern California where you're just like bred to hate LA. And then I lived in New York where you're also bred to hate LA. And then I discovered after visiting there a lot that the people in LA were like, we don't get it, it's just the weather's really nice, like, chill out. The traffic is bad everywhere. This whole thing that like LA has the worst traffic, horse shit. I've been to Houston, I've been to Seattle, I've been to Albuquerque, I've been to Phoenix in the last like 20 days. Terrible traffic. Anyway, so I got invited to be on a panel at the Los Angeles Film Festival last year, and I was very nervous because this was the first kind of like big thing for me. It was a theater of about 460 people. The other people on it were like David Wilson from True False Film Festival, who, if you don't know him, he's just devastatingly handsome, and every time he's around I turn into like a moron. It's really embarrassing. I like think of somebody as relatively self-possessed, but I can't with him. And the producers of Ain't Them Body Saints, Dana Harris, the editor-in-chief of IndieWire, was moderating the panel, and I was like the, you know, the whole time. So I didn't eat very much before I went on this panel. And I sat on the panel, it was a packed theater, and then there was a reception. And at the reception, there was wine. And people were like, oh, good panel, have a glass of wine. And somebody else was like, great panel, have another glass of wine. And now I haven't eaten, and I'm really nervous, and so I have a lot of adrenaline pumping in my system, and now I've had a couple glasses of wine. And I'm standing in a circle, as occasionally happens in Los Angeles, and it is a Warner Brothers executive, Ann Thompson from Thompson on Hollywood, Vincent LaForette, and one of my colleagues. And the Warner Brothers executive, in the course of conversation, says something incredibly disparaging about, you know, there's, you know, too much content, not enough audience for it, and I don't know why indie filmmakers don't get that. I had had too much wine, and I was like, excuse me, if you hadn't created a system that was only for films about white middle-class men finding themselves, and that was the only audience you were actually empowering, maybe you wouldn't have such a problem finding audience for all the other exceptional films out there that you're ignoring. He did not like that. Later on, my colleague Erica would tell him that he was being stupid with his face, so I did not say the words that he no longer works at Warner Brothers. I don't think it had anything to do with us. Ann Thompson, at some point before the end, was like, you got spunk, kid, or however it is she talks. And then Vincent LaForette, who is a cinematographer and a gear blogger, and you know, he develops technologies. I didn't have really a sense of how influential he was, which was good, because in my drunken state I would have been even worse shape. He thought this was really funny that I mouthed off to this Warner Brothers executive, like really speaking out of turn. And he invited me to go sailing, as apparently happens in Los Angeles when you impress someone, with the founders of Red, as in the camera. The guy's name is Ted from Red, which in my drunken state I had a good time with. Ted from Red. And so we went a couple days later. It was beautiful, it was lovely. We had a long time to talk about sort of the state of the independent film industry and the things that we wanted to do. And he, a few days after that, wrote a blog about Seed&Spark. The part of this story, the very important part of the story that I left out, is that we were running a crowdfunding campaign for Seed&Spark on Seed&Spark during this time. He wrote this blog about us and about what he thought we might be able to mean to the future of film if we have the support of the community. And he posted the blog. I didn't know he was going to do this, and he posted it at 1:30 in the morning. And I woke up at 9:30, and we'd had 3,500 views of our pitch video and thousands of dollars streaming into our campaign from all over the world. Very specific blog. Yeah, exactly. All the blog posts from 1:30 in the morning. And one of the things that we realized as a result of this is even though we were filmmakers and we run very lateral sets and we don't think of above the line, below the line, we as a company had been messaging above the line. we had been really speaking to directors, writers, actors, producers. We had not been speaking in a way that the crew would respond. And Vincent taught us how to talk to the crew, and that we could talk to the crew. And that, of course, sent me researching, well, who else can I reach out to? So I reached out to Philip Bloom, who as a result of Vincent's post was more than happy to tweet about our campaign. I reached out to the folks at Digital Bullets who I had met at South by earlier, and they wrote a really lovely blog post that was very meaningful to us. Like, we couldn't have known this gap in our business, right? This entire audience that we were not reaching, because we simply didn't know how to talk about what we were doing in the right way, and we had to be taught that by somebody else in our audience. So it was a very, and it made our campaign. It was the difference to making our goal. And that also came out because I was out in the world, not because I was behind my computer. I am not, by the way, advocating that you get drunk in public during your campaign. I just want to be clear about that. And obviously, using your thank yous is more outreach. We tweeted a lot about the post that Vincent made. It's sort of like, thank you so much, Vincent Lafray, for these wonderful things that you say, both thanking him and posting the post, which is like altruistic and self-serving at the same time, really. But using a lot of altruism, supporting lots of the other campaigns and things. And then there's all sorts of examples of creative outreach. The team from If There's a Hell Below, who did the Funder Games, decided that they wanted to connect their filmmaking as a whole to kind of interesting community efforts. And one of the things they did is they reached out to an organization locally to them in Portland called Real Girls, which is a women in media leadership training for girls ages 9 to 19. They always need equipment. And so they said, if you fund these 2 line items, our hard drives and SD cards, when we're done with the film, we're going to archive them elsewhere, wipe them, and donate them to Real Girls. And that got exposure for Real Girls and also got their line items funded really quickly, and Real Girls promoted that, obviously. And then I told this story as a result of teaching this class in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for the Louisiana Film Festival. And I didn't know this, but a reporter from Backstage was in the crowd. And they wrote to me afterwards and said, hey, we want to know more about Real Girls, and I just put them in touch with the filmmaker. And now the film and Real Girls were getting exposure in this big, actors blog, and a whole bunch of good came to Real Girls. A bunch of money came into them, actually, as a result of one little act of kindness as a result of a crowdfunding campaign, and everybody won in that case. Sheila Scorn, the feminist grindhouse flick I was telling you about, the beginning of their pitch video, across the supercut of all the action are these really cool graphics. And the first part of it just says, shit-talking, ass-kicking women. And they were trying to look for where else they might encounter shit-talking, ass-kicking women. And they were like, duh, the roller derby. So they partnered with Angel City Roller Derby, who has their elite team, who are world champions, like an incredible team. And then they have a B and C team, who are like sort of part of how you practice up to be on the A team. And these are not like fishnets and makeup. This is like, these women are athletes. And they were having a double header for their B and C teams, and so Sheila Scorn sold tickets. A portion of those tickets went to their campaign, but they got to have a step and repeat and sort of throw a little, lobby party where this thing was, and it was a packed house. And all of these people who are in real life into shit-talking, ass-kicking women are now exposed to a film that might appeal to them. And it was this great thing. They had fake tattoos. They took all these pictures. Like, these guys were going around with Sheila Scorn neck tattoos. It was really badass. It was super fun for everyone. And it introduced a whole bunch of wayfish filmmaker types to the Derby, and a whole bunch of Derby types to independent film in a way that they probably had never considered independent film could reach them. Super good for everyone all around. And then, of course, I've shown you enough of the time signature memorabilia photos. I am obsessed with them. When your campaign is finished, that doesn't mean your work is finished. So, of course, you have to collect all the materials to continue to demonstrate the inevitability of success, or rather, demonstrating the inevitability of success by showing people that you're having it. And collecting things like EPK and BTS, those are not just for your audience, but also, I just moderated a panel at Austin Film Festival with Logan Mulvey from Amplify, also a stupidly handsome human being who I get really awkward around, and Melanie Miller from Gravitas, who is so smart about digital distribution and audience building. It was really interesting to hear what they were saying. And one of the things was something that we say also all the time: do not skimp on EPK and BTS, because if you want good key art for your film that accurately represents your film, if you want to make a distributor super excited to work with you, having this stuff really matters to them. Now imagine you're talking to a distributor with really good EPK, really good BTS, and a huge audience built behind you. You think that's a different conversation? Oh, you bet it is. Personal videos, things that you can send to your community that are just nice. Like, put a thank you video together for everybody who's been involved with you, just cause. Not because you promised it, but because the relationship to your audience is uniquely meaningful and you can cultivate it in lots of creative ways. Outtakes, those always work really well. Make sure you get permission from your actors to use your outtakes, because sometimes they don't like to be humiliated on camera. Someday, so Caitlin Fitzgerald starred in my first film. She's now one of the stars of Masters of Sex. And I have a supercut of her imitating her cousin shout barfing. Because it was the only thing that got us to laugh. We had to start the scene hysterically laughing, and it was the only thing that was consistent in recreating the laughter. So we have these outtakes of like 15 disgusting shout barfing imitations, and I hold that over her head all the time. Someday I'm going to release that. It's really, when she wins her first Oscar, I'm just going to be like, I'm just going to do it now. You don't have a choice. Stills, parts of the tease, incentive fulfillment, any visits to set, things like that. That's really, really fun for people. And now here we are in the actual resolution and possibly moving forward, sort of third actian piece of this. Remember we talked about, oh, it's so stretched out, these concentric ovals. But we talked about the concentric circles to start from the outside in, and now I want to talk about concentric circles from the inside out. If you continue to grow your audience, as a part of your career, not just your campaign, you always give them visual, shareable progress. You fulfill your incentives, meaning you're constantly delivering on the promises that you're making. Your social media presence is active in that 9-to-1 ratio, and that you're always letting people in to the world of inspiration that is kind of taking you along as an artist, that your process is part of the product, and that you're constantly making an effort to bring people into the center and collect more email addresses, because that will always make your IP more valuable. You'll start, if this is your first time crowdfunding, at the very center with just your filmmaking team. And the first red circle on the outside is, of course, your friends and family, who make up the first, like, 30% of the campaign. But as you go on campaigning through the social interest groups, the organizations, and the schools, and the blogs, you're going to add these concentric circles on the outside, growing your audience. Your social media network, of course, will continue to amplify and continue to grow if you make a really earnest effort to keep this up. And then, of course, your festivals are probably the most important place to add to the outside of this circle in ways that you can't do necessarily, even through social media. So for I know everybody sort of has the dream of going to premiering at Sundance, or premiering at South by, or premiering at Tribeca or Toronto. And those are really great places to get press and maybe interact with industry. They're not such great places to be able to get an email list of your audience at the end, and to meet the people, the real red-blooded humans who are going to be your faithful audience forever. I have never been to Memphis before. I'm here because of the festival. And the only time I would get to speak to Memphians, that's adorable. The only time I would get to speak to Memphians is because of the festival. It's because of the festival that I'm here, and I'm getting to grow an audience for my company, right, or for my film. And that means you can't stink at your Q&A, right? The Q&A is an incredible opportunity to build audience for life and amplifiers and evangelists for life, but only if it's a delightful experience. And nothing ruins a great movie like a crappy Q&A. Oh, no worries. Nothing ruins a great movie like a crappy Q&A, and nothing can salvage a movie that you weren't sure about like a brilliant Q&A. I saw a film at the Austin Film Festival, I wanted to say a couple of weeks ago, but I feel like it was like 6 days ago. And I was supposed to really like it because I know a lot of the people involved with it, and that's always nerve-wracking when you see the world premiere. And I felt about it, to be honest, but I stuck around for the Q&A. And the way that the actors talked about what they were going after, the way that the director spoke about the film, the way that the cinematographer, which was beautifully shot, sort of framed for me kind of the process and the experience, I'm with them for life. I'm gonna pay attention to what that director does next. I'm gonna recommend that film in a different way. And it's really about this interface that is so important, is the IRL, as the kids are saying, the in real life. So can you believe we actually have to have like a word for in real life now? It's kind of, or an acronym, it's kind of amazing. Shake hands, kiss babies, make friends. You know what I mean? Like, Dan Guando, who I've picked on all this time, is also just an exceptionally good human being and shows up to the parties afterwards. And having a good time, a good relationship, a drink and a nice chat with him without asking him for anything is a really good way to start building those relationships, right? So the cool thing that I think about this is if you really engage in this process and you keep it up, when you start your next film, you're not starting in here anymore. You're starting out here. That's a totally different and way more powerful starting point for your next film. And one of the things we're working on right now at Seed&Spark is how to model at what point is it the second film or the third film where you're really on the long tail making enough money to support your life. And this is what's so powerful is I don't actually think this model will work first in New York or LA. I think this model will work first in places like Memphis and Albuquerque and Kansas City and St. Louis, where it's not so exorbitantly ridiculous to live, and you have a community of people who powerfully want to support your relationship to your audience and to your community, and that, like, you know, the government people are also behind that in more powerful ways. That is a really exciting time, because it is a time where the center of power has actually shifted away from New York and LA in terms of who's got the power to change the business fastest. I don't think it's Los Angeles anymore. And after what I saw last night, I really think you guys have something going on here that could demonstrate a lot for us moving forward in the business. You can join the conversation nationally all the time. So we host a Twitter chat every other Tuesday called Film Curious. Are we on CST?
Yes.
Okay, so it would be 1 p.m. for you guys every other Tuesday. It's your lunch break, like grab a sandwich, get on your computer. And what we do is we crowdsource questions and we come up with themes. So sometimes it's ultra low budget filmmaking. Sometimes it is getting to the equity investor and what will appeal to them. And we bring in, really well-known equity investors. We bring in DIY filmmakers who've made exceptional award-winning films for almost no money. Or we bring in the distribution people. And we do this as a Twitter chat so that it's not just the experts who are talking at you like I have apparently done pretty much all day today. It is also the filmmakers sharing their experiences, what's worked and doesn't work, together, and it's been really, really cool. We've seen filmmakers collaborate. We've seen them start to cross-promote in cities that they've never been. It's working as this interesting kind of virtual festival all the time in that way. If you don't know about Script Chat, if you're a screenwriter, Jeannie Bowerman, who's the editor of Script Magazine, hosts Script Chat at 9 p.m. on Sundays with Kim Garland. And Script Chat, hashtag Script Chat, is like the bat signal for the stuck writer. Like if you tweet, I can't figure out the third act, hashtag Script Chat, another stuck writer will be like, let's work through your stuff, because man, I can't even look at mine anymore. It's really incredible. But it's really about growing your community of ideas and connecting to the people who are also trying to figure this out and not being so, alone behind our computers all the time. Obviously, that means if you're continuing to grow your audience, you have options for controlling your distribution now that you've never had before. And Tugg is just one in a number of tools that allow you to monetize your audience either theatrically or otherwise. Do you have some questions? That was a lot of talking. Yes?
I just have a question about the pitch video. Does it have to be like the director or like myself that's on it? Because I personally don't like being on film, but I do have actors and things like that that
I've totally seen the personal appeal piece come from an actor playing the director, and it's been very funny. But you've got to figure out how to creatively make it work for sort of the tone of your film. I will say, like, I totally understand that there are people who are like, I need to be behind the camera. And I will say this, given what I just said about festival Q&As, there is a piece of being able to talk passionately, directly, and meaningfully about your work that is just an essential component of your career, right? And so I've also seen it where the director has just done the voiceover over a very creative sort of cut of what the film is going to be, and that's worked well also. But you need to give us a sense of who we are investing in. People don't invest in ideas, they invest in people. Yes?
Welcome to Memphis. Be sure to eat barbecue before you leave.
Already done, no problem. Went to Grand Rendezvous as soon as we got out of the car.
I actually produced a documentary that aired on cable.
Oh, great.
And it's currently available online and on DVD, but I'm not really sure. I don't know if this is your wheelhouse, but I think this would be a good idea for the next phase.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the next phase should be.
Sure. I mean, for your film, for the current film?
Yeah, I mean, because it's done, so I don't need funding for the film, but I know
you want to drive traffic to people watching it.
Right.
Right, so all the same rules apply. The first is you probably now know 10 or 15 people who watched the movie. And you came in a little late, so you missed the important part, which is sort of how to figure out who your audience is. And that's through an interview process.
Yeah,
oh, you did see that. Okay, great. So, so what I would say is go back to 10 or 15 people who watched and really liked the movie, find out where else they are, and then build a sort of audience building campaign where the call to action is not funding, it's watching, right? Trying to get them to watch where you want them to watch. We had a filmmaker do something really interesting recently for a film called Layover, and they decided to create a Layover Live event where they just coordinated a whole bunch of people to stream the film simultaneously, and it was a Twitter event. So the participants in the film, or the actors and the directors and everything, were tweeting along with the audience, and they had people sign up. So they got email addresses for people to sign up. They provided them the link, so they didn't have to pay for it because they knew that the chatter was going to be really important about the movie. And they had this great live event. And one of the things they did is they got a couple of importantly influential people involved early on. So Lexi Alexander, who really likes people to kind of take their careers by the balls, she would say. She is a former Krav Maga fighter or something, kickboxing champion. Terrifying, she's amazing. But do something that kind of gives people a reason to arrive. Create a deadline, right, which is the night of the event, and give because part of the importance of crowdfunding is it creates a deadline for you to get things done. It creates a sense of urgency. So if a film is already out there and finished, now your job is to figure out new ways to create senses of urgency. So if there's sort of a zeitgeisty thing, if there's something happening in the news that your film kind of interestingly addresses, then bring it back up then. But keep your social media outreach as sort of a constant, here's the world of the film that's interesting, and here's why, by the way, you might want to watch this film as a result of these things. But yeah, create some events around it. I think that will really help.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
Emily, thank you so much for coming back and giving us this great presentation.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for asking me about my movie.
Yeah, I hope it was useful.
It's very useful, and actually I'm gonna, since everybody's here and some people expressed an interest, I'm gonna do an active crowdfunding demonstration. So anybody who wants to see the movie, which is called High Ropes, and we'll be shooting next year, can go to highropesmovie.com and give us your email address.
Yep.
There's a little window. Type it in.
Do it. Go to highropesmovie.com and give him your email address and see what he does. I think the other thing is really important is to learn from other crowdfunding campaigns. So one of the things that I was going to say is we usually do this. I mean, I know this is available for free. Thanks very much to our sponsors. So one of the things that I was going to say is your I've come here to contribute something, the sponsors have contributed something, and so I'm gonna ask you guys to contribute something, which is to go out onto the internets and find a crowdfunding campaign for a film that appeals to you enough to contribute in some way. Whether that's a tweet or $10 or whatever, but go learn about what makes you excited about a crowdfunding campaign. And of course, I would like it to be on Seed&Spark. If you like action films, there's a film crowdfunding right now called Headshots that's gonna be real fun. And Elle Schneider is the only female camera executive in the world, and also constantly writes about female cinematography stuff. That one's pretty cool. But go find what appeals to you, and then provide some feedback for the filmmaker. Hey, this is what I really loved about this, and this is what I'd like to know more about. To just really contribute to this world that you're planning to participate in. If you wanted to tweet about the State Indie Tour, which is what we're on, we will be next in St. Louis, and then Columbia for Citizen Jane Film Festival, then Kansas City, Denver, Boulder, Salt Lake, Las Vegas, and then I get to go home for Thanksgiving. Maybe let us know what you learned from this that you think was really useful, and obviously if afterwards you're like, oh, I wish I had asked this question. I am so reachable on Twitter, it's a little worrisome. I'm at Emily Best on Twitter, so you can just tweet at us directly, or you can tweet at Seed&Spark. And then most importantly, I think the culture of plenty starts with us knowing that we are the most important word of mouth recommendations to our friends. All these people in the room are the people that your friends ask for, what have you seen lately? And they take your opinion the most seriously. It's also why regional film festivals are so important, because all the people who show up to Indie Memphis are the people in Memphis who other people in Memphis ask for movie recommendations, right? You meet the cinephiles and influencers in every city. So please be those really powerful word of mouth recommendations. Tell people what you loved, encourage them to go see it in places that they can pay for it. And make sure, and then I will just finally say this, please demand that people pay for your work and demonstrate always that your work is valuable. That is the only way that we are going to build a healthy business model, because I'll tell you what, the exposure economy has not worked very well for us so far. We have a partnership with American Express. We distribute 5 films a month, and they have apps and channels that get into 67 million US homes. If you have uplifting shorts or feature films that are in the PG-13-ish space, meaning not too much nudity, not too much swearing, and have a generally uplifting quality, and you have the broadcast rights available, and you'd like a little 6-week deal to pay you money, go ahead and send them our way. They didn't want to pay us money for this deal. They offered us this deal and they said, think about the exposure. And I was like, wow, you are the small business company of the world. Would you ever ask a bread baker for 67 million loaves of bread for free? And they were like, no, no, we wouldn't. We totally get it. And so they pay a licensing fee for these films. And sometimes it's not that, like, I actually think Amex is a profoundly good company by and large, particularly with my experience now working with them. I think the problem is we have spent so long actively participating in the exposure economy as filmmakers that we forget that it's okay for us to say that we provide a very valuable cultural service that people need to pay for. And by the way, we pay for it all the time, right? Cell phone bills and our Netflix streaming fees and our cable bills. We are used to paying for content, right? So we can just demand that it's done a little differently. Think about what the organic produce business has done to us, right? Like, we will totally pay $1 extra and get what we think is a better quality product. And the nice thing about the indie film business and direct distribution is you don't have to pay extra, and you can still get a better quality product with money that you can feel confident is going back into the pockets of the filmmakers. Thank you for your time.
Fuel Film would like to thank Emily for not only sharing her information, but her passion